It's YouTube Wednesday! Krampus time! I have a really big piece of fake fabric here. I bought about 7 yards a while back for other costumes, and I've used bits and pieces of it. If you buy it on sale at Joann's or Hancock Fabrics, you normally get it for about $10 a yard. Never buy it at full price. Always sign up for their online clubs because that gets you really good coupons. When I'm working with it, I always turn it inside out. I don't want the fur side up because that causes a lot of problems when you're cutting, and it also kind of messes with your eye when you're visualizing patterns. I don't ever use paper patterns where I put it down on the fabric and then cut out around it. I just don't do that. Most of what I make is made for monsters, so it's about yay big, about yay wide, about yay tall, and that works, and then have adjustments. Or it has to be for multiple actors, so one size alone wouldn't be the best use of the materials. And now I'm just going to cut it straight down. I'm going by the center, where the center fold was in this bolt of fabric. I'm cutting through both sides at once. That's kind of trapping all the fur that's in there up against it, so that's not going to run around on me and cause issues. Okay, I'm going to get this piece out of my way because I want to work with this piece right now. Front and back, I need to make a head hole. I'm going to just fold it in half to find the exact center of this. I have that now pinched. The way I folded it, I now have about a foot hangover more on one side than on the other. That's going to be the back, because most people have a bit more junk in their trunk, so things are longer in the back. If you have a bit of a belly, you might want to make it longer in the front. I'm going to go ahead and make mine longer in the front because I got more belly than junk in my trunk. So now what I've got here is this whole piece is folded in half. I'm at the center point. I folded that in half. And now I'm going to cut a very simple semicircle. And that gives me this piece here, which is my head hole in the piece. All fabric has a grain, okay? So what's going to happen is that this is going to have fur going one way on one side and a different way on the other side. To even that out, I've got to cut this apart and flip one piece over so the grain goes down in the front and down in the back. I don't want to cut it right in the middle of the hole because that's not the best place for a shirt to sit, for a head hole to sit. I want to cut it at the back of the hole and be able to flip it over. And actually this grain is not that bad. I'm going to leave it. On the inside right now, I'm going to label this. Up here near the neck hole so I don't get confused anymore. Back, front. I now have the fur on the inside, the skin side on the outside. I'm going to grab my sewing machine and just sew this puppy up down the sides. But before I can do that, what I need to do is give room for arms, because I need armholes up top. To get that done, I'm just going to take, I know about how big my arm is, but I want to give myself plenty of room. This is fur, it's going to be a costume, so I'll be moving, it's going to be warm. I need to give myself a little bit of room here so that I can get some air circulation inside of the suit. This is going to seem like a lot, but I'm going to go down 14 inches. That gives me a 28-inch hole right here for my arm. Around my bicep is about 15 inches. So It depends on what size the person is going to be in a suit, but also you want it to fit a range. And I'm going to fold it over and just go on the same side. My sewing machine set up with basic black thread. That's normally the easiest thing to use because it won't stand out on most Halloween costumes. So that's what's normally loaded into my sewing machine. Type of sewing machine, type of stitch. For this, not that big of a deal. I tend to over backstitch. I backstitch a lot because I'm not serging this. If you sew, you probably know more about sewing than I do. At each side, I go back and forth quite a bit to hold that end of stitching down. Okay, I have my fur back in my machine. Presser foot's down. Back and forth. Before I test fit it, there's one thing that I want to do, but I got to turn it inside out first and grab a brush. Right where these two seam together, there's going to be the cut fur, and there's also going to be, because when you cut it, it cuts through the fur, there's just going to be a buildup, and I don't want that all over my table, so I'm just going to brush it out, and that's going to stick to the brush more than it will to the table or fly around on me. Also, what this does is it really helps hide the seam. Before, all that fur is pulled down into where it's sewn together. When you brush it, you pull the fur out, but lets the stitches stay. Okay, here I am modeling my fur chest and back piece that I made. Fits fairly good. I never measured. If I need it on a smaller person, I can put in some grommets in the back and then a lace, so it just laces up tighter around the waist. Most monsters, you want a bigger chest, so put those grommets right here and down, maybe 3 or 4 on each side, then you can lace that together. It's back of the costume, so it's not as visible. I'm pretty happy with this, so I'm going to continue on and make my furry arms length of arm. I know that the costume comes out to my shoulder. I just tried the piece on, so now I'm going to cut arms that are from basically my armpit out to my wrist. To get that measurement, I'm going to stick a measuring tape in my armpit, pinch it at my wrist. I'm looking at 22 inches. That's all I'm going to need. But I know I've got to sew it on, and that's going to eat up a little bit of fabric. So I'm going to go out to 26 inches. That gives me room for a seam at this end and for the other end. So 26 is my measurement for length of arm. It's 32 inches long. So I have enough room to do my sleeves just boom with the length. But the grain of fur goes in a certain direction. It's going to look silly if all of the hair on my arms, when I hold my arms out, is going down. You want it to go out. That's a big deal. So I have to go with the grain of the fur. The fur on these, on this piece, runs this way. This is the top. This would be near my armpit. So I have 32. My measurement for the hole that I made was 14, which means I need 28 inches on this end. Again, I'm going to allow for a little bit more, so I'm going to go ahead and use 30, which will give me a 2-inch strip I'm not using on this particular piece. I don't want to measure or cut on the fur side. It's very hard to draw out markings on the fur side. 26 is length of arm. My fur's going the right way. 26. Here is where I cut. I don't want this to be a giant bell sleeve that just goes all the way down. So what I want to do is I want to taper the sleeve from the armpit down to my wrist. I do that just by popping an angled line. I'm going to look at my wrist. This is the simplest way to measure for me. I put it between my two wrist bones. I wrap it around the number that it's on. I got about 7.5, 8-inch wrists. Alright, that's going to be a little bit tight. I also need room to sew. I'm actually going to call that, and I can tell by looking at it that's pretty big. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to 7.5. I'm just going from end to end. That's what my sleeve is going to look like. I have one sleeve. That's the pattern for my second sleeve. Making sure this is lined up the right way and folded. Hit this with my brush, pick up some of that fur. Keep a little bit of it off my table if I can. Right now I have two sleeves ready to be sewn. Right now it's not a tube. To make it a tube, I have to sew down this side. So I'm going to go ahead and set my machine up and do that next. I want to mark this top corner. That's the tippy top of the shoulder. I happen to be sewing this. I have made many costumes where all I did was hot glued. I don't want to use regular hot glue, I want to use fabric hot glue. But I can hot glue all these same seams the exact same way. Then when you wash the costume, go ahead and wash it in the washing machine on gentle. Don't ever dry it. Number one, you can't dry fur. Number two, the heat could undo the hot glue. If you're a patient person who knows how to sew correctly, please do so and find a proper pattern. I am not. But I'll have this done in about an hour and a half. I now have my fur bodysuit. I'm turning it back inside out so I can get some more sewing done on it. And once again, I'm lining up the shoulders with just about the back of that neck piece. The neck hole, I should say. My sewing machine has a little platform break right here that makes it easier for me to do sleeves and sew on sleeves and sew around things. Remember, I marked the top of my sleeves. Remember the top of the shoulder point? I marked that. I'm going to put it together with the top of this shoulder point. Pull both of these down. I'm going to start sewing this. I only sewed from the top down to the bottom on this side of the sleeve. I have left this, the armpit, open. That's for ventilation. Fur costumes get really hot. This isn't for a movie. If it was for a movie, I'd still do it. I would just sew in a bit of pantyhose in there to hide the hole. But it needs to have ventilation. I'm at the top of the shoulder again. I'm going to pinch them together Put the fur on the inside. When you're making vented sleeves, which is the open armpit, it is always better to have a bigger sleeve end than a bigger chest piece end. Because if this hangs open, they're going to see whatever black t-shirt or whatever is underneath. If this is bigger, then this is going to hang down over top of that hole most of the time and just flap open to let air out. It's like a valve. I'm going to knock out the other side. Alright, now I turn it inside out and see how it fits. There's my suit. Kind of vague and bear-like at this point in time, but this is it's going to be for a Krampus character for a Christmas party basically, but I have ventilation right here that is hidden by the flaps on my arms. I have bigger upper arms than lower arms because the sleeves taper. And I have room to tuck in my gloves underneath of here. It's not so tight I can't tuck in my gloves. That's important to me. I have a lot more to do on this suit, and I'm going to get to it. I have a mannequin body form here that is pretty much almost chest to knee. Alright, well, neck to knee. And I am built a little stouter than this body form, so I'm going to put a couple sweaters on it before I put the fur suit on it and do some detail work. And the sweaters will bulk it out. What I'm about to do is the step that takes a fur bodysuit from being normal, off the shelf. This is what takes it to the next level. Alright? I'm going to add some detail to it. It's just kind of a weird haunt tool. It's an electric razor, but it works really well for what I'm doing right now. I want to find a center line. Okay. I want to find about where the pecs are. Okay, there you can see I put a lot more definition in. Now this has to dry. I'll try it on again, make sure everything lines up. We're good. But I got some long hair now, some short hair, and some muscular definition, and even some ribs on the sides. Yeah.